Daniel opened the door with a grin and reached for the pie dish in my hands. "Leela sends her love," he said. "She had a spa day booked, said the steam rooms might help with her headache." I nodded, stepping inside. The smell of roasted vegetables drifted from the kitchen. The dining table was already set, candles lit, glasses polished. Daniel always tried harder when Leela wasn't around, and I appreciated the quiet between us. No small talk, no stiff smiles. We sat down to eat, just the two of us. It wasn't unusual Leela traveled often, and when she stayed back, she preferred to rest. Tonight she'd chosen the spa over dinner, and Daniel had filled the silence with easy conversation about work, the weather, the neighbor's new dog. I was halfway through the soup when my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen. Rosa. Odd. She never called in the evenings. "Excuse me," I murmured, standing and answering quietly by the hallway. "Mrs. Emery." Her voice was barely audible. "Yes, Rosa. Does anyone else have your keys?" I blinked. "No. Just you and Daniel in case of emergency. There's a woman," she whispered. "She just arrived. She had a key. I thought you'd hired someone else. She walked in through the back, like she belonged there. She's wearing gloves." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She didn't knock. Just unlocked the door. I only noticed her through the kitchen window when I came to drop off the plant food like you asked. I didn't want to confront her. I couldn't breathe." "Rosa, get away from the house. Right now. Please. I'm calling the police." Daniel looked up as I returned to the table, pale and stiff. "Everything okay?" "No," I said, reaching for my purse. "I need to go." Without another word, I was out the door key, shaking in my hand, the soup still steaming behind me. By the time I turned onto my street, I was already dialing 911. The street was too quiet when I turned in. Porch lights glowed behind drawn curtains, and the world outside looked unchanged. My house sat still, every window dark, just as I'd left it. The police arrived minutes after I called. 2 officers swept through the rooms with flashlights and soft, practiced steps. Rosa waited across the street, arms crossed, eyes wide with worry. She didn't leave until I gave her a small, grateful nod. "There's no sign of forced entry," one officer said. "Locks are intact. Nothing obvious taken." I didn't argue, but I didn't agree either. When they left, I stepped inside slowly. The air felt heavier than usual. My hand hovered near the light switch before I flicked it on. The hallway looked fine. So did the living room. But something in me braced for impact, like I already knew what was coming. The kitchen drawers had been opened and left ajar, not pulled out all the way, but just enough to signal that someone had been searching. The pantry door was unlatched. The guest room closet hung open, hangers uneven. Then I reached Richard's study. I hadn't touched that room in months. It still smelled faintly of his aftershave. His books lined the shelves in the same careful order. The desk drawer, always locked, was now cracked open. A few papers spilled across the rug. I knelt and picked one up. It was a letter. One of the ones he used to write by hand before his illness made that impossible. He'd written it in the spring of 1987. I recognized the ink, the slope of his signature. Whoever came here hadn't just passed through. They'd lingered. They'd searched. Nothing was broken. Nothing destroyed. And yet the space didn't feel like mine anymore. As if the air inside these walls had been rearranged, rewritten without my permission. I closed the study door softly and leaned against the frame, listening to the stillness of the house. Then I noticed the jewelry box on my bedroom dresser was gone. I walked the house slowly, room by room, drawer by drawer, not touching anything at first. The television still sat beneath the window. My laptop remained plugged in at the kitchen desk. A small envelope of cash I kept in the freezer, untouched. Even the pearl earrings in the bathroom drawer, the ones in their travel pouch, hadn't been disturbed. It almost looked staged. as if someone wanted me to think nothing had happened. But when I reached my bedroom, I knew. The jewelry box that had always sat on the dresser, small, velvet-lined pale blue, was gone. It wasn't worth much in money, but inside were things no one else would have looked for: my mother's brooch, a locket with my son's baby photo, the watch Richard wore on our wedding day. I checked the drawer beneath it. The letters, folded yellowing, wrapped in a thin ribbon, were missing too. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying not to cry. They hadn't come for things. They'd come for history. 10 minutes later, Daniel pulled into the driveway. He stepped inside carefully. "Mom, you okay?" I nodded, though I wasn't. "They said nothing was taken." "Not quite," I said quietly. "The jewelry box is gone. Some letters. Richard's watch." He glanced around. "But everything else, TV, computer, even your ring box, still here." "Yes." He shrugged. "Then maybe it wasn't a real burglary. Could have been a confused neighbor, or someone just looking for quick cash." "No," I said. "They didn't touch anything valuable. Just what mattered." He hesitated. "That's strange." Strange didn't cover it. I walked him to the front door. He hugged me tight and said he'd check in tomorrow. I closed the door gently after him and locked both bolts. Back in my bedroom, I stood in front of the empty spot on the dresser. Someone had reached into the quietest corner of my life and taken what they shouldn't even have known was there. The next morning, Rosa returned with fresh linens and a frightened look in her eyes. Rosa came by early as promised. She didn't go near the back door until I reassured her twice that the police had cleared everything. She brought fresh linens and a jar of her homemade peach jam, the kind she always left on my counter like a quiet offering. Over tea, I asked her again to describe what she saw. "It was a woman," she said firmly, fingers curled around the mug. She had dark hair pulled back. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. Just turned the key and walked in. "You're sure she was alone? I didn't see anyone else." And she wasn't nervous. She moved like she'd done it before. Her words clung to me long after she left. That quiet confidence. The way the drawers had been searched but not ransacked. Whoever entered hadn't been guessing they knew exactly where to go. And I kept coming back to Leela. A few months ago, she'd made a comment while we were in the kitchen. Something about emergency contacts and knowing where to find important papers. "Just in case anything happens," she'd said, with a soft smile brushing crumbs off the counter. At the time, I'd thought it considerate. Now, I wasn't sure. Daniel stopped by that afternoon with a new deadbolt. "Extra security," he said, unpacking tools and pretending not to see the tension in my eyes. He talked about the break-in like it was already behind us. He didn't mention the jewelry box or the watch. And he didn't ask how I was sleeping. Maybe he didn't want the answer. "I told Leela what happened," he said, as he tightened the screws. She was shocked. "Said it's probably some vagrant passing through." I nodded, though her absence said more than her supposed shock ever could. "She didn't call? Didn't text? Didn't offer to visit?" When Daniel left, I stood behind the locked door listening to his car pull away. The house creaked around me, shifting under the weight of something neither of us wanted to name. The next morning, the envelope was waiting in my mailbox. I wasn't expecting anything that morning. No deliveries, no notes. Just the quiet rhythm of coffee and toast, the way it always was after Rosa left for the day. I opened the front door to water the planter by the steps and nearly missed it, an envelope tucked beneath the edge of the mat, like someone had hoped I wouldn't notice right away. There was no stamp, no return address, just my name in looping, unfamiliar script. I brought it inside with shaking hands and sat at the kitchen table before opening it. The paper was thick, expensive. I could feel the shape of something hard inside. I didn't breathe until I unfolded it. Richard's watch fell into my palm, the same worn leather strap. The tiny chip on the face. I hadn't seen it since the break-in, and now here it was, returned like some kind of twisted offering. Beneath it, a photograph. It was glossy, recent. Leela stood in what looked like a warmly lit party, a glass in one hand, smile wide, and practiced. She was wearing a navy cocktail dress and my mother's brooch, the one I'd assumed she'd never even seen. It sat just below her collarbone, glittering like it belonged to her. My chest tightened. I couldn't move for a long time. I stared at the photo until the edges curled under my fingers. It wasn't just a guess anymore. It wasn't a suspicion. It was proof. Leela had been in my house. Leela had taken what wasn't hers. And now someone, maybe her, maybe not, had returned a piece of it, just enough to make sure I understood who was behind it. I placed the photo beside the watch and stared at both like they might speak if I waited long enough. There was no explanation, no apology, just silence and certainty. The kettle began to whistle on the stove, but I didn't get up to stop it. That afternoon, I drove to Daniel's house with the envelope on the passenger seat. Daniel opened the door with a smile, but it faded the moment he saw my face. I didn't wait for small talk. I walked past him and placed the envelope on the kitchen counter like it weighed 100 pounds. "I need you to look at something," I said. He hesitated before opening it, eyes flicking from the watch to the photograph. His fingers stopped on the image, held it longer than he needed to. "Where did you get this?" "It was in my mailbox this morning." "No return address." "Just that." He studied the picture again, then let out a short breath. "This could be from years ago. Maybe it's not even your brooch." "It is. Even if it is." He exhaled slowly, trying to measure his words. "You don't know when this was taken. It might have been gifted or borrowed, or, Mom, this could have been edited. These things happen." I didn't answer. I watched him grasp for explanations that didn't require him to look too closely. He set the watch down carefully, as if handling something fragile. "You've been through a lot lately. Maybe someone's trying to get under your skin. People stir things up when they know someone's vulnerable." "I'm not vulnerable, Daniel. I didn't mean it like that." "You meant it exactly like that." He looked at me, then really looked, and I saw something. Flicker, concern, maybe even guilt, but it passed too quickly. He was already moving back toward comfort, toward reason. "I just think you need rest. Maybe step away from all this for a few days." The words landed cold. I nodded because it was easier than arguing. But something inside me went still. If he couldn't or wouldn't see what was in front of him, then I had to stop asking him to. I picked up the envelope, folded the photo back inside, and slipped the watch into my purse. "I won't bring it up again," I said. And I didn't. Not with him. That night, I sat at my kitchen table long after the sun went down, staring at the photo and planning what to do next. I drove to the hardware store early the next morning. 2 small cameras, discreet, motion-activated with cloud storage. I watched the tutorial twice before installing them, one tucked near the hallway light fixture, the other nestled high on the bookshelf in the living room. Both aimed at the places that mattered. The places someone would return to if they thought I wasn't looking. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't tell Rosa. 3 days later, I called Leela. She answered on the second ring, bright and sweet as ever. I invited her over for tea. She paused for just a second, barely long enough to notice, then said, "Of course. That sounds lovely." I baked cranberry muffins and set out the good china. The cameras were rolling before she even knocked on the door. Leela arrived in soft pink and too much perfume. She brought a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and called me Mom with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We sat in the sunlit corner of the kitchen sipping tea, and I let her talk. She asked how I was sleeping. I said not great. She asked if the police had found anything. I told her no leads. Then I leaned in and said it casually, like an afterthought. "It's silly, but I've been so forgetful lately. Last night I went to bed and left the back door unlocked. Can you imagine?" She laughed lightly. You should be more careful. I know. Sometimes I don't even set the alarm. She sipped her tea and didn't say a word. But I watched the way her fingers tightened slightly around the cup, how her eyes didn't blink for just a second too long. When she left, she hugged me tightly. Let me know if you need anything, she said, stepping back with a smile. I nodded, thanked her for the flowers, and closed the door behind her. That night, I angled the cameras 1 inch lower just to be sure. 2 nights later, I waited until just after 7 to make the call. I put Daniel on speakerphone and kept my voice light. I'll be heading to Judith's for dinner tonight, I said loud enough for every word to carry. Probably won't be back until late. Daniel barely registered it. Sounds good. Tell her I said hi. I hung up, slipped on my coat, and left the porch light off behind me. I parked 2 houses down, engine off, phone on silent. The street was quiet, porch lights, glowing windows lit with evening routines. I sat in the dark, breath held in pieces, watching my front door like it might breathe. At 9:37 p.m., it happened. The porch light flickered. A figure emerged from the side yard hood, pulled low gloves on, flashlight in hand. No hesitation. They walked straight to the door, used a key, and stepped inside like they lived there. I didn't move. I tapped my phone camera, pressed record, and held it low in my lap. Inside, the living room lit up briefly. The hallway camera would be watching now, capturing every step. I pictured the drawer, the missing box, the papers no one else should have known about. She didn't wander, didn't search. She went directly to the same hallway, to the same place where my letters had been, and knelt down. From the car, I saw her silhouette against the far curtain. Calm, efficient, like she'd done it before. She stood, checked something in her pocket, then moved toward the bedroom. My chest stayed tight, but my hands were steady. I let the camera roll. I let her stay. Let her believe I was somewhere else again. When she finally left 20 minutes later, locking the door behind her, I didn't get out. I just sat in the dark for a long time, watching my house go still. The next morning, I downloaded the footage to a thumb drive and set the dinner table with the good china. I spent the afternoon preparing everything exactly as it used to be. Roast chicken with rosemary and lemon, Daniel's favorite. A light salad. A small fruit tart for dessert. The good napkins, the tall glasses, the wine that Leela always pretended to like. They arrived just after 6. Leela swept in, first arms outstretched, all warm smiles and glossy cheer. Something smells amazing, she sang. Daniel followed behind her, quieter, distracted. We ate like any other evening, surface deep, polite. Leela complimented the seasoning. Daniel asked about Rosa. No one mentioned the break-in. It was as if we were all trying to stay in a version of the evening that hadn't been touched by what came before. After dessert, Leela leaned back in her chair and tapped her wine glass. You know, I was thinking, this place could use some light changes. New curtains, maybe paint? I smiled. Actually, I do have something new I want to show you both. I stood and walked to the television, the remote already in my hand. One click and the screen lit up. There she was. Leela in my house. The hallway light caught her cheekbone as she stepped inside. She wore gloves. She held a flashlight. She moved with purpose, straight to the drawer. Clear as day. The room went still. Leela's voice broke the silence first. That's not me. She laughed, but no one joined her. It's edited. Or wait, maybe it's someone who looks like Daniel hadn't spoken. He stared at the screen, then at her, then at me. Leave, he said quietly. Leela blinked. Daniel now. She looked between us as if searching for a door that wasn't visible. Then she picked up her purse and walked out without another word. I didn't follow. I walked to the kitchen and began rinsing the dishes. Daniel sat at the table, silent, his face pale. Later, he helped me finish putting the glasses away. We didn't speak of the footage again. But that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept with my bedroom door open. The house feels different now. Not untouched, never that again, but quieter. In a way that no longer makes my chest tighten. Daniel has been coming by more. He doesn't always stay long. Sometimes he just shows up with takeout and sits beside me while we eat in the living room, no conversation needed. Other times he brings tools, patching the frame around the back door, replacing the lock on the study drawer without being asked. He hasn't mentioned Leela, and I haven't either. Her absence hangs between us, not heavy, just present. Like a painting taken down from the wall, no longer there, but the outline remains. The neighbors know, or at least suspect. I can feel it in the way they glance toward the house when I'm trimming the hedges. Some of them wave a little longer now. A few have even stopped by with pie or flowers, as if grief comes in many forms, and they're offering comfort without asking questions. No police reports were filed. I never needed them. What I lost couldn't be listed on forms or valued by insurance. This morning, I watered the garden out back. The one Richard planted years ago when his knees still let him dig into the soil. The lilies are late this season, but they're coming in. Slowly. Steady. I kneeled to loosen the earth around the roots and felt the warmth of the sun press gently against my shoulders. It reminded me that not everything taken needs to be replaced. Some things like trust don't come back the same way, but others like quiet, like air, like stillness, they return, in time, when you stop holding your breath for them. I stayed out there for longer than usual, hands in the dirt, listening to the breeze move through the fence slats. No creaks from inside the house, no shadows in the window, just me, and what's left, and what's still mine.